The other day, I did a story about an elementary school out in Maryland called the Salem Avenue Elementary School, where the principal instructed the teachers to go visit the students at home a week before class, get to know them, build a connection with them, but more importantly, get them to understand where these students come from so that the teachers understand why it's important not to lower standards, lower expectations, but raise standards and raise expectations. The principal had amazing words like this from the piece.
I think it has made it more humanistic. I think it's also really, in some weird ways, really helped them push their expectations higher. I'm a firm believer that you can't feel sorry for anyone. Feeling sorry for someone never has made them stronger.
And it was a great story that not only gave me hope when I was watching it, but it gave a lot of you out there in the audience hope that I was covering a good story. Well, unfortunately, the city of Portland and their public school system is going in the complete other direction. They are now removing standards based on a memo that has become out into the public for equity purposes because they actually genuinely believe that minority children just can't learn. And we're going to get into this, and I'm going to talk about how much I hate this. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to everybody who signed up. actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform. So the headline reads, "It's about fairness. Portland Public Schools considers grading changes to reduce bias in the classroom." And the subheadline says, "The district is considering making changes focused on measuring students' content knowledge rather than behaviors like missing assignments or turning in work." Now, right off the bat, I hate everything about this story. I hate everything about the headline. I hate everything about the subheadline. And I have a local news segment, a companion piece, that actually gets the arguments in favor of instituting this program. And guess what? I hate every single person involved in that as well. I just showed you, just demonstrated how a school district with 100% poverty, a lower budget than the Baltimore Public Schools, and poorer students than the Baltimore Public Schools can achieve above the state average in public schools, become a 4 out of 5 ranked school in their district, and this is because the principal believes in the students and would never dream of feeling sorry for them or lowering the standards for them. And I thought that was a beautiful model to take forward. But unfortunately, what we're getting is stories like this where the entire Portland school district is considering moving to this model. And it is much worse than the headline and the subheadline would indicate.
PPS is looking to change their grading system.
It's making sure that students have an opportunity to demonstrate what they know and what they're able to do, not based on their behavior towards work completion.
So this is one of the figures that they trotted out in order to defend this terrible policy. And already from her initial premise about how it's about demonstrating what the students know and not about work completion. And here's the thing, it is important for students to demonstrate knowledge of the subject matter. That is why you give them assignments so that they can do that.
They are currently under a traditional grading system, but want to move to what they call an equitable grading system, where teachers assess students' work while considering their diverse background needs.
But schools also have another role, and that is to prepare students for the real world, to actually work in the real world. And you know what you have to do in the real world? Show up on time, make deadlines, submit your work on time. The school has essentially embraced this stereotype, and by the way, we've seen other institutions do this, that black people, students of color, can't show up on time. The color people time or black people time stereotype that you've heard a lot about, and I know somebody is gonna say in the audience that that stereotype is rooted in truth, but the thing is, a negative cultural attitude to showing up on time does not benefit Black America. It hurts Black America, and you incorporating that negative behavior, rewarding that negative behavior, is not going to help them. It may make them feel better in the short term where they're not getting penalized for, completing their work in school, but in the long term, you encouraging and facilitating them not showing up on time, them not completing assignments, is going to hurt them when they try to enter the workforce. These are bad habits to be teaching our young students. And by the way, if you don't get that this is about race, just look at what the handout had on it. It starts with the school district showing historic racial disparities between black students and white students and their pass-fail rate. The handout also instructs teachers not to assign zeros for assignments that are handed in late or are missing, which is crucial. And it says that students that are caught for cheating are not to get a 0 or a downgrade in their grade, but they are to face some disciplinary actions. So again, we have this woman that's talking to the local news that I just played for you, completely and utterly lying. She says, oh, we don't want to penalize them for late work. How late can the work be? To infinity. You can never turn it in under this new grading rubric, and guess what? You can't get penalized in your grade for it. What is the point of even assigning work? Who the hell knows? If you go out into the real world, you get assigned something to do by your job and you just never do it. You think you're not going to get fired? Absolutely not. Of course you're going to get fired in that circumstance, but even more insidious is this idea that we can't even expect the students in these schools to fail with dignity. If we catch them cheating, they're not to be penalized in their grade, even if you're going to suspend them for a day or give them a good talking to, which is patently ridiculous and absurd. Unless we're talking about the first round of the tuning exams, where every ninja's got to use their skills in order to complete the test, this doesn't make any sense at all. And in fact, even in the tuning exams, you would just lose points for the first couple of times you got caught cheating, so there was still a grade penalization aspect to that exam. Now, the district administrators said these changes and others would make classrooms more fair and reduce bias. Kimberly Armstrong, by the way, the same woman that I showed you the video of, said what it's doing is assessing mastery and accuracy. And she's the chief academic officer for Portland Public Schools. And get a load of what else this woman has to say about your children's education.
Maybe there's some like linguistic inaccuracies. Maybe there are some home life hardships that make it difficult to complete assignments on time, or even maybe there's some errors.
Think about what this woman just said and compare it to what the principal of that elementary school in Maryland that we covered on this channel before actually did, and the results that he got from doing that. In that school district, the closest thing to a landmark was Heroin Highway, an intersection of two highways where a bunch of people are addicted to heroin. The parents in that area are disproportionately addicted. The children are 100% below the poverty line, poorer than the students in Baltimore City's public schools, and they have less money to work with than Baltimore City's public schools. Yet he was like, know their challenges, know what they're facing, be compassionate, but don't feel sorry for them. Have expectations for them. Raise standards. He focused on increasing their reading program, and if you heard Kimberly right there, she wants to do the opposite.
Maybe there's some like linguistic inaccuracies.
So I've spoken about this on this channel multiple times, and it's because it's incredibly important. The fact of the matter is, anybody who tells you that African American Vernacular English, which is the politically correct term for Ebonics, is just as valuable or just as valid as standard American English or British English is lying to you. They're wrong, and worse than that, they're actually hurting black kids in these schools, because the fact of the matter is, any textbook in any subject is written in standard American English or British English if you're in the UK. So you not correcting these kids' improper pronunciation of English words or use of the English language actually makes it more difficult for them to read, because if you never correct those issues, chances are they're not going to understand what they're facing. On top of that, in India, in China, what do you think they're learning? British English and standard American English. They're not learning Ebonics. They're not learning African American Vernacular English, if you want to be politically correct about it. So what we're actually doing is disadvantaging members of our own population, our own citizens, in comparison to people in foreign countries in speaking what should be the native tongue. It's ridiculous and absurd. It's done under politically correct guise, but the thing is, nothing could be more harmful to black kids learning how to read than tolerating these policies. It's madness. Armstrong also said that zeros given for missing or late assignments usually throw off the entire grading scale. The handout instructs teachers to not give less than a 50% grade for any work that is incomplete, late, or does not meet expectations. Late work would not be penalized, period. Quote, whether or not a student does things on time is less important than what they do. Gail Thiemann, a professor of curriculum instruction at Portland State. By the way, if you ever needed proof that titles are meaningless, just read that quote and realize that title is that of a professor, a purported expert in the topic, and she's an absolute buffoon. Also, it's completely dishonest and misleading, because the way she's trying to paint it is, oh, when the student turns in the assignment on time and nails it, we should grade it based on that and not penalize them too heavily, which a lot of people might be susceptible to that argument, if I'm being perfectly fair. But the thing is, the curriculum doesn't say you can turn it in a couple days late and not be penalized dramatically or anything like that. What it actually says is that even if you never turn it in, you shouldn't be penalized. That's in this article. It's from the memo. So they can quote this professor and she could try to whitewash what's going on, ironic terminology, but in reality, in actuality, we see what you're doing.
Rochelle is a mom of a kindergartner and a 5th grader and says getting rid of zeros is a good thing.
When you put a 0 on a kid, like, you're putting a value judgment on them, right? Like, they are feeling the impact of that 0.
Are any of us surprised that this woman has a hyphenated last name? Are any of us surprised that she has the problem glasses? Are any of us surprised that somebody with the hyphenated name, the problem glasses, would have a take as dumb and completely asinine as that? When you give somebody a 0, it's like a value judgment on that kid as a person. No, it's a value judgment on the assignment, which, by the way, under this rubric, they don't even have to turn in order to not be penalized on their grade. You're not a good parent to your kids if you don't understand that having the option for failure is necessary in order for them to succeed. Again, this is the self-esteem movement gone completely out of control. And by the way, there's so much more to this curriculum that is insane, because you would think, what the hell are you even grading these kids on? If they don't turn in their assignments, no grade penalty. If you catch them cheating, which why would they? Because there's no consequences for failing, no grade penalty. Now you would think, based on the fact that you can't grade their assignments, you can't even stop them from cheating under this new grading rubric, and you're talking about demonstrating mastery and what they do rather than what they turn in, that obviously you're going to grade them on their participation in the class. Well, that would make too much sense for these insane progressives, because they also put in the memo that grading participation is racist. It's all about the bias of the teacher, and honestly, teachers are probably too racist to be grading minority students. There is not a more racist document related to education that I've seen in a very long time. You only put this together if you genuinely believe that there is nothing black kids can do in order to be successful, so you try to make a system to alleviate your own personal guilt rather than try to meet them where they're at and elevate them, again, like they did in that Maryland school. And by the way, you might remember that we did a story about something like this on this channel before. We covered the Edina School District out of Minnesota, which was the #1 school district, although it did have an achievement gap between black and white students. They also implemented an equity curriculum where they wouldn't judge things so harshly like grades and assignments. They decided that they needed to boost black reading by introducing Ebonics-laden books into their reading curriculum, and guess what happened? Edina School District, #1 in Minnesota, dropped down to the bottom of the pack in the state. #1 to at the bottom. They destroyed that school district with these very policies. They fail every time they're implemented, because just as it's true of drug addicts, it's true in education. Denial of the problem is not a solution. Pretending that the standards must be racist if certain kids disproportionately aren't meeting those standards is not going to do anything positive for those students, whether they be white or the other kids. This is exactly what people talk about when they fear progressive policies, that they don't want to raise people up in reality. They're fine with bringing everybody down to a level. This is not about helping the students. This is about alleviating the guilt of the teachers and the administrators, and never once addressing a problem that actually comes from the students, what they bring with them to the classroom. And God forbid you talk about the households that they actually come from. You can pantomime and talk about, oh, well, we got to think about where they're from. But in reality, if you actually cared about these kids, you would address the problems in their household, not just excuse the circumstances of their household as if it was bestowed upon them like an asteroid hit them or something by an act of God. A lot of people in the comments will call this the soft bigotry of low expectations, but let's be clear about this. This is the soft bigotry of no expectations. Even low expectations actually have standards. There are no standards here. They're getting rid of them all because fundamentally, Portland's public school system, they don't believe in the kids. They don't believe they can succeed, and they do buy into to all those racial stereotypes that they pretend that they're fighting against. But hey, those are just my thoughts. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the madness at Portland schools. Till next time.